Hello, in this video I'm just going to go through a couple of basic sort of housekeeping chores that you should do as soon as you've done a fresh install of Windows Server 2008 R2. If we just do a quick review here, we're going to see that we're going to be setting the IP address to be a static IP address for our server, and we're also going to assign the server name of our choice. Below that I've just put a couple of quick notes about the particular network that I'm working within for this demonstration. So our default gateway for this demonstration is going to be 192.168.3.1, and that's also going to act as our DNS server. Now obviously on your network those IP addresses could be different, so you'll need to change those to reflect whatever network that you happen to be working with. Let's go ahead and get started. So we'll log in. And once we've logged in for the first time in server here, you'll see that we get this initial configuration tasks pane that appears. And it's quite handy for the two tasks that we want to do, because they're in fact right at the top here. We can see that we can configure the networking, and we can also provide a computer name. So let's start with configure networking and setting the static IP address. I'm going to click on that. Now you'll notice at the moment that my network looks to be all up and going, and the reason why is because by default server has installed and has looked for a DHCP server, which I do have on my network. So it actually has resolved and got itself an IP address and a gateway and a DNS, but those at the moment are being controlled by the DHCP. So over time, when a new lease has been issued, the IP address for the server could change, which would not be ideal for a server. Now there's a couple of ways I could fix that. I could go into the DHCP, if I know how to do that, on the actual DHCP server rather, and configure this particular server to have a fixed IP. And I could do that by telling it what the MAC address is of the NIC on this particular server, and then from that point forward the DHCP would always assign the correct IP address. Or alternatively, I can just go to where we're going to go in this demonstration and set the static IP on the server itself. So you can see I've only got one NIC installed on this particular server. It's named at local area connection, which is quite descriptive, but just to reinforce what we've been learning in our classes, I'm going to change that to green connection. That just helps to remind me that this server is going to be part of the green network. Now I'm going to right click on the connection and choose properties. I'm after the Internet Protocol version 4 and choose properties. We can see here at the moment that the IP address is being assigned automatically. We want to change that to use the following IP address, and here's where we need to make a decision about what is going to be the static IP address for our server. So I've already decided in this instance that I want it to be 192.168.3.10. I'm not going to make any changes to the subnet mask, so I just press tab to go past that and down to the gateway. If you recall from the picture I put up earlier, the default gateway was 192.168.3.1, and so was my DNS. So I'll just put those in. I don't have an alternative DNS server at present. I might configure one a little bit later on, but for now I'm going to leave the alternative DNS server blank. I'll click OK, click close, and that's it. I'm done. I've now set a static IP for my server. What I might like to do, just as a quick test, is bring up the command prompt and just check a couple of things before I move on. So I'll just change the settings here for the font so it's a bit easier for you to see on the screencast. Okay, so first of all I'm going to do an IP config with a switch of all. And what we're looking to see here is whether the IPv4 address has changed to the one I preferred, which it has. We can see that our default gateway looks fine. I've got the right IP address there, and I've got the right one there for my server, our DNS server as well. So it's all looking reasonably well, or good. So what I'm going to do now is just do a quick test of my gateway. So I'm going to do a ping, and let's try and get out onto the internet. So I'm choosing Google here, which we hope will work, and there it goes. It comes back and says it's fine, so that looks like we've been successful at setting our static IP. Our next task is to set the name of our particular computer. Now, I haven't set this computer up to work on a domain at present, so it's just working as a work group. That's fine for this demonstration. We can always add it to a domain or make it a domain controller later on, and I'll talk about that in a future video. But for now, I just want to change the computer name. So we'll provide a computer name. This is a shortcut to the system properties dialog here. If we look down towards the bottom here, you can see that you can rename the computer by clicking on the change button. So we'll go ahead and do that. Here is the name that was generated for us by the Windows installer. I don't want that. I want to change it to something more meaningful. Now, there are naming conventions that most organizations have. If you're just doing a small network, you might want to use descriptive names, so you might want to call it file server or something like that. I'm going to pretend in this particular instance that we are part of a fictitious company called Polywaffle. So in this case, I'm going to call this PolyServe1. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click OK. We now get a warning that by changing the computer name and applying these changes, we're going to have to restart the server. That's fair enough. I'm okay with that, so I'll accept that warning. I'm now going to close the system properties dialog, and now it's going to come up and ask me, would I like to restart Windows Server so that computer server name change can take effect. Now, you can delay that if you wish to by clicking on restart later. I really don't recommend that you do that. There is many things that can go wrong if you start trying to add various roles and features to your server before you've restarted it. So I always think it's a good idea at this point to click on restart now and then continue on with configuring your server. I hope you found this useful.